This podcast is brought to you by PwC.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Data Ascent, a technology and data podcast brought to you by PwC Switzerland. I am your host, Matthew Dunn, and today is a very exciting day for the podcast. We have our first external guest outside of PwC, and we're thrilled to have Raphael Ventieson here with us from the AI Sandbox of Canton Zurich here in Switzerland. Raphael has a background in business, political science, and hands-on experience in AI, and he's played a pivotal role in shaping the AI ecosystem here in Switzerland. We first got to know Raphael after our most recent Digital Leadership Summit, where he presented as part of a panel that covered the impact of Gen AI on Swiss society and beyond. And outside of that, we figured he'd be a great guest for our podcast. So Raphael, welcome to the show.
Hi, Matthew. Glad to be here. Looking forward to continue the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe we can start there. Can you start a bit by sharing your background and your journey into AI along with your educational experience so we can kind of set the stage for what's to come?
Yeah, sure. So my first real touch point with the topic of AI was when I wrote my master thesis. I was in Berlin at that time, and Berlin has a great ecosystem of startups, and the topic of AI was becoming more and more prominent, and I figured that to write my master thesis about the business model development of AI startups would be an amazing topic, and I focused on that one.
Mm-hmm. And so the AI startups, we'll get into the cantons of this AI sandbox, but from your educational background, how did that lead you into the world of consulting, as you and I talked about, but also into your future work with the sandbox? How did that kind of set the baseline there?
Yeah, sure. So I had a lot of interviews with founders and CEOs of startups, and we generated some interesting insights also that they pivoted their business models a lot because of a lack of data access. So they had to change something about the business model because they didn't find the right quality, the right amount of data, or the right data sources. And that made me very curious to continue to work on this topic of AI. And when I went into consulting afterwards, I had the opportunity to work on AI applications in the realm of HR, specifically recruiting, which was a fascinating area at that time. Obviously, the technology wasn't as mature as today, but I had the opportunity to pilot a lot of AI applications in the space of recruiting.
Yeah, and I think from one consultant to another, I think I'm biased, but it definitely sets a great baseline. You get a lot of different project experience, different experience in sectors. So I think for anyone, it makes a great baseline to get into the world of AI. Now, on AI, you are an accomplished author, I might say. We talked a little bit about your publication, Decoding Artificial Intelligence, and I want to dissect this a little bit because you wrote this publication in 2020, and now we're sitting almost in 2025. How do you think the public's understanding has changed of AI since then with innovations? ChatGPT now is in our everyday lives, but how do you think that things have changed from when you wrote that to now?
Yeah, it's such a fascinating question, and I like to think about it.
Yeah.
Did the publication age well or not? I would say maybe a couple of points there. So first, obviously, it was a different time, and the paradigm was much more that AI will kind of automate some standardized and very repetitive tasks. And I would say that has completely shifted since then. I have to say we had a section on generative AI at this point. It was a small section, so we never expected to become so big. But we focused on generative AI also much more with regards to AI can create new pieces of music and paintings, and we didn't really focus that much on language at that point. So that was very interesting to look back and see how it shifted. And the other thing we looked at was also the amount of data that is needed to train models. And even at that point, we made the prediction that at some point we will hit kind of a plateau where we need to figure out also ways of training models with smaller data sets. That was one of the predictions. I guess we wouldn't have expected that the ceiling is so high and with large language models that they will get so far. But I think these discussions are still relevant today, and that's something that definitely was was something we had kind of a prediction that made sense at that time and still now.
Sure. I mean, everyone has predictions. Some we get right, some we maybe get not so right. But like, I think it's telling to say that you were writing this publication in 2020, and this goes to show your background in artificial intelligence, and even now you're still working with it. And that leads me to my next question, kind of really where I want to focus this conversation is on the AI sandbox. I think from a governmental perspective, it's very unique what Zurich is doing and the work you're doing within the sandbox. So can you kind of explain the AI sandbox of Canton Zurich and its mission and what makes its approach kind of unique?
Yeah, sure. So back in 2021, we figured out that AI will be a very important topic for the whole economic and innovation ecosystem here in Zurich. And there was this idea of creating a sandbox. Nobody really knew what that could look like. And the sandbox analogy is very interesting. So it's kind of this playground where you try stuff and then try to transfer also the things you learn to the real world. And I have to say that there are many different sandbox approaches. So the term is often associated with different things. And what a software developer would understand as a sandbox is very different from what we are doing. So to cover the topic, what we are doing in the sandbox. In recent times, it was clear that technology is moving too fast for regulators to catch up. And we need new models for regulatory learning. And there was this huge topic of regulatory sandboxes where you can test, for example, AI applications and learn how the future policies should look like. And what we did in the sandbox was we created a program where we combined this regulatory learning approach also with enabling innovation. So in a nutshell, what we do, when you develop AI models, a system, or any application in AI, you can come to our program and we provide two types of services. One is the regulatory consulting. We clarify legal questions in areas such as data protection, intellectual property rights, public law, but also sector-specific, for example, autonomous driving. We cover all that to help you get your use case really compliant. And on the second front, we also provide access to data sources, to testing partners. We do also matchmaking where we see a great fit between the use case and testing partners that then could deploy the solutions. And we create this shared learning space. And at the end of each use case, we publish all results and share the insights that we gained with the entire ecosystem. Mm-hmm. So that's basically how it works.
And we talked a little bit in our briefing about different learnings you've had over the course of this sandbox. You've probably seen lots of startup ideas, lots of things, maybe great ideas, maybe some not so great. But can you talk a little bit about your kind of the bottom up approach? You mentioned the use case, but also I think an approach that's interesting, the fail fast, the idea of that, and kind of how that really helps you guys find really good ideas for startups and continue those and foster those ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question because this bottom-up approach is really complementary to all the strategic top-down work that has been done. And for us, the bottom-up approach means that we take a very limited scope for an AI use case. The more concrete, the better. And then we try to implement it and then transfer the learnings and generalize the insights so that more and more people can benefit from the insights we generate. What that means concretely, we can definitely also cover in some of the examples, but that's basically the approach. So really bottom-up, use case-based driven.
And I think it's a good point to talk about, especially now, because companies, everyone wants to do AI, but we can't just force it upon any scenario, right? There has to be tangible space for a use case to appear and say, hey, this is a great example where we could use AI, Gen AI, large language models. And so I think the bottom-up approach is very interesting. The projects you work with, you mentioned we can get in some of the specifics. Is there one that comes to mind if I say, hey, what's one project recently, maybe not the most successful one, but one you thought was very interesting or that you were able to help in an innovative way?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, it's to note that we selected a lot of projects that we completed kind of pre-GPT. So the focus was much more on computer vision. And there we did some really exciting work. So for example, one of the projects that we had was a smart parking use case, which uses computer vision to create real-time data on parking spaces. The first goal would be to support the public administration in making better traffic decisions and traffic planning. And the second one is also to provide real-time data to drivers who can access the data, and we want to limit search traffic so that they can access the free parking spaces and navigate through a city in a better and more efficient way.
Wow, I think everyone has their complaints about the parking system, no matter which city they're living in across the world. So this is a fantastic startup that I would be happy to support in that space. Thinking about this podcast, and we are a Switzerland-specific podcast. We're here in Switzerland. Why do you think Zurich and maybe Switzerland more broadly is such a hub for AI innovation? I mean, we talked a little bit about the international aspect just a bit ago, but why Switzerland, and why is this AI Sandbox in such a good place in terms of the environment?
Yeah, I think Switzerland has really a big advantage in the sense of being in the middle of Europe and having access to really, really great talent. So if I would need to summarize it in one word, it would be really the access to talent in the AI space. And the position outside of the EU allows us to have a little bit more freedom when it comes to AI policy. And that's really the big opportunity I see for the future. So really to use some of the freedom to really focus on enabling innovation through initiatives such as the AI Sandbox, but there are many other great examples in Switzerland, to really set us apart and create this hub in the middle, in the heart of Europe for AI innovation.
And you mentioned the future. If you were to write a Decoding Artificial Intelligence Round 2 version in end of 2024, 2025, and specifically regarding the AI Sandbox, where do you see the Sandbox going within the next few years? I mean, obviously we can't predict the technology we would have had a few years ago now with ChatGPT, but where do you see the vision and where you want to take the Sandbox in terms of still helping startups?
Yeah, I think our focus on startups at the moment will be strengthened in the future. We would like to scale it up, of course. There are much more use cases and projects we could do. One specific area where I see a lot of potential for the future is the strengthening of the know-how transfer, because we do all these exciting projects, we generate the insights, but it takes also a lot of resources to spread the knowledge, to host workshops and spread these insights and share it with other ecosystem players. So that's definitely an area where we want to focus on. And secondly, I would also see some complementary initiatives that focus a little bit on different target groups. So one area that is really exciting for us is also focusing on enabling SMEs in general, which are not necessarily in the AI space, to leverage AI for them within their current business. And that's something we look forward to implementing in the future. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Raphael. I think that was all of the AI Sandbox is fascinating stuff. Again, we talked on the way over here, but I'm proud to be in Zurich, to have an AI Sandbox within the canton I live in. I think it's very unique. Maybe if our listeners are curious to learn more about the Sandbox or to help support the Sandbox, what can they do? How can they get involved in that process?
Yeah, sure. You can just check out the canton website that covers the AI Sandbox. And apart from that, obviously, you can also always reach out to me personally, because it's something that we're really keen on, to stay open for other ideas, for questions with regards to the initiative. And we're really looking forward also to continuing this conversation with you all together.
Well, thank you, Raphael. We really appreciate your time and coming here. And thank you, everyone, for listening. That does wrap up this episode of Data Ascent, a technology and data podcast brought to you by PwC Switzerland. If you're curious on learning more or want to get to know Raphael a bit better, we'll put all of the information in our website and also the episode bio. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and also Spotify and YouTube. And if you have any questions, feedback, or ideas for future episodes, feel free to let us know in our website comments. Until next time, I'm your host, Matthew Dunn. Thank you for joining us. Thanks, Raphael.